since you're my special friend, come closer for a special treat. I'm going to let you touch me in a special place.
It is never okay to touch someone else's private part. Your mom and dad will tell you so.
Yo, I get live like Tupac, getting shot in the lobby. Most MC styles is robbery of my freestyles as a hobby. I pick apart monkey brains and spread disease through hot zones. My cameos on promo seem strange, like someone's not home. Big just the outside, rain on your dream field. With style so freaking wet, niggas need maxi panty shields. Expose more moles out the closet than lead paint on your tenement. Got more black thoughts in my root than most niggas got in their pigment. It's the babyface lieutenant with the luck like Luciano. Hardcore like Coochie rap music made for concert piano. So dust off the candelabra. Hip-hop's version of the Super Dundana with the license to give more ass whippings to father. You couldn't see me with my nose telling myself like celebrity. Make most crews disappear like blackheads on oxycream. Under the light, I fuck up nights with my uncanny ability to heat seek through brain facilities with the science of microchemistry. The history of my hip-hop is too deep to be dissected. If you can't recollect, don't even half-step or try to test it. Black Big Just, I dropped so much shit my anus needs an ice pack. In fact, of all that, LP, you'll bring the horns back.
Yes.
Right through the center of your focus.
You are correct.
A long silver needle piercing the outer lens of your eyes. And once again, in one verse we prove we can rip all these signed big budget motherfuckers. Piece of stretching Bobito. Ye old lyrics of fire, surface bombs from X-Wing fighter stands to B-boy, actors fraction, negative 30 below wind chill factor. The counteraction is just a helpless action of the hapless flinching, but supersonics leave you mute like Maggie Simpson. Taxidermist LP out of fly translation, instigators setting quakes throughout your whole situation. Practice exposing perfection like Ricky Lake exposed white trash. My shit is strange, X-File number 267, whiplash, triple, felon MC minus the melanin. One I bomb with the type of shit to make baby Jessica jump in the elegant. Sunshine's on rain acid, LP, the battle master lactose, breaking down your fucking fractals till you blasted them. Leaving Las Vegas like 100 flying Elvises raid. Spot my prey, swoop down and crush their pelvises. Right nerve like dead and crow smoke, bitch. Catch my frozen frame suspended. You couldn't even fuck with my idol fidgeting. My birthright, I'm pulling swords from stones, hot toes beam. Phonetically aborted, try to distort it and catch a silent scream. Fetus, the raw daddy tactics, prove, crush, groove, unstoppable. Test your luck, it's like sucking on that pain popsicle. The enigma, no one can fuck with me, but still I'm not signed. You want a battle? It's better to look in the mirror. Say Candyman 5 times.
Context of White Supremacy, Justice, and Gus T. Renegade. Justice, take it away.
Hey, Gus.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'm here. How you doing?
I'm well. My co-host, Justice, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Go right ahead.
Hello?
Yes, sir.
Hello? I'm here.
Go ahead, Justice. You can tell them who our guest is going to be and proceed. Justice?
Hello?
Yes. You're on. We're live. You can go ahead and tell them who's going to be on the show and go ahead and talk.
Okay, the person's going to be on the show. His name is John. I forgot.
John
Delport.
There we go.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
No problem.
and I would like to start with a question.
Okay. Is there a question to me?
I can't hear you. Hello?
Sorry, is there a question to me?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
How do you practice white supremacy every day?
I live in a really big house that's pretty much in a white neighborhood. I got into a PhD program and I get to go and talk about problems. I drop my kid off at a school that costs $900 a month. I have a nanny that looks after my other boy for $2,000 a month. I pretty much have access to anything I need resource-wise. And I get to choose whether I'm going to be acting on my whiteness or not. I'd say that's probably we've got some other things. I mean, and the fact that my skin color is white.
Hello?
Hello, I'm here still. I think the phone is it mutes me out when I'm not talking.
Okay. And can you explain that to me again?
Okay. So basically, I live in a pretty much a white neighborhood.
I don't need anything at all, like about the neighborhood or anything. I just need my information to be, how do you practice white supremacy every day?
Well, I would say just being white, right? I mean, it's kind of, when I step out my door, I'm pretty much into the privilege that the whiteness brings. When I walk into a public place, people don't, it's kind of, I'm a white guy, so people don't take on precautious around me. You know, like I say, I get to go to a school where my all the kids at my son's school are white. Have you got? Can you like push me a bit more on that question? Because you know, it's harder for me to actually recognize exactly where I'm privileged. You know, I mean, I know I'm privileged, it's a given, but the actual concrete examples I can think of are just like when I walk. You know, I've got access to everything I want to.
Okay. And so that is what you do to practice white supremacy every day, right?
Yes, that is what I do. I'm trying not to act as a white supremacist, but I mean, unfortunately, given the color of my skin and the privilege that comes with that, it's something that if I'm not consciously working against, the society is built for me, right? So kind of everything I do is preloaded or got the background of white supremacy on it.
Okay. And I forgot to say this, but I have something to ask. Can everyone on the call try to speak at a vocabulary level I can understand? I'm 10 years old. Thank you.
Okay, cool. Yeah, just tell me if I've said something that doesn't make sense.
Thank you.
So does that make sense what I said? Like, just being white, when I step outside, even inside my house, I mean, I have things that advantage me because I'm white. So that would be, at this point in time, I can sit on the corner of the street where I am, smoking a cigarette, talking on the phone outside somebody's apartment, and nobody's worried, or nobody's kind of cruising around checking to make sure I'm okay. When I go into a restaurant or a coffee shop, I don't feel any kind of like weird at all. You know, I don't know if that happens to you, but but then if you look at my history, I think that gives you a lot more of kind of how my white supremacy has got me to a place where I don't even have to think about being white. It just seems like it's a God-given natural, like, hey, this is me. I've worked hard to get what I want. Does that make sense, Justine? I suppose another way, Justine, that I do it is in the work that I do.
Yes.
I'm very...
Yes.
Does that... Okay, sorry, I think we got a delay.
I cannot understand you.
Okay, cool.
Is it that you can't?
Yeah, I can't understand you.
Is it that he needs to speak louder, or that the words he is using you don't understand?
The words that he's using, and he needs to speak louder.
Okay.
Speak louder. Oh, okay. So did you get anything of what I said there, Justine?
No, I can't. I cannot hear you.
Okay. I'm gonna take the thing off, and I'm gonna talk into the thing. So basically, what I'm saying is, in my whiteness, my white supremacy, is it's a birthright of sorts that, given that I'm white, I don't have to really question anything. So like right now, for example, I'm sitting on a corner in a urban kind of condominium area, and I'm sitting on the corner smoking a cigarette, talking to you, and nobody's worried about me sitting here. And I would say if I was non-white, people would probably be a little bit more giving me double glances, checking me out, that kind of thing. And then the other way that I act on the white supremacy is that I get to choose when I'm studying and when I'm working. I get to choose if I want to talk about race, if I want to work with issues of race and white supremacy. I get to choose if I want to do that, or I can just do other research or other work in the stuff that I do. So that gives me the advantage of white supremacy, is that I get to choose, what I want to talk about and who I want to talk to and that kind of thing. I don't actually have to deal with my race on a day-to-day basis unless I'm asking myself questions about it. Was that louder?
Yes. Thank
Okay.
you. And who do you know that practices racism, white supremacy better than you?
So I know, I've got a lot of white South African friends who I would say act on it, are more active about it in their conversations and the way that they treat non-white people, the way that they act weird around them, they act awkward around them. So that's how I see it on a personal basis. I was with my son, I was at the park one day, and there were a bunch of kids, African-American kids, making a lot of noise, playing on the thing, and he came to me and he said, I don't like the black-skinned kids. So, those are some concrete examples. When I was growing up, I grew up in South Africa, and I saw a lot of active racism in the way that non-white people were not given access and just basically denied and any type of right like I had. And then the other place I see it a lot, which I've only started realizing recently, is in institutions, places like schools, particularly like Seattle public schools. I just see in the classroom and the types of teachers that kids of color get versus the type of teachers and school buildings even that the white kids get is very different. And then if I look at the juvenile justice system, so where young people who have committed crimes or whatever, they go to like the juvenile justice system, and if you look in there, it's just there's far too many non-white people for it to be just natural and normal. So that's kind of where I see. If I look,
I'm not.
Yeah.
Hello?
Hello? I'm here.
I'm not talking about, like, that type of things. My question is, like, who practices racism better than you? That's all I need to know. I don't need to know any of that stuff.
Well, like I said, I've got white South African friends who talk about and actively try and shut out non-white people. I would say, working with teachers in the Seattle public schools, I've seen things happen there that make me realize that they have the ability to act on their white supremacy in a more evident manner than I do, in a more open manner. I can't think of any other examples at this point.
Okay.
Do you have more questions, Justice?
I'll think of more.
Okie dokie. Again, the C.O.W.S, Context of White Supremacy, our second show today. Our guest for this program, Mr. John Delport. He is, as he said, in the PhD program at the University of Washington College of Education. As he already said, grew up in so-called South Africa, now in Seattle, Washington. Graciously agreed to come and hang out with us. This program was suggested by Back of the Bus. Hope he's listening. Maybe he'll call in. Is there anything you would like to tell our listeners, Mr. Delport, about yourself, your experience in South Africa, and just anything you think they should know about who you are?
Okay, so I would say, context-wise, I grew up in South Africa, and where I grew up, it was very active racism, very active, only through laws and through violence. People that were non-white were excluded from us white people. And so growing up, I never saw non-white people that weren't in a subservient role. So that would be like maids, garden boys, which was kind of ironic because they were like 50, 60 years old, digging ditches, and always very subservient. So whenever I talked to a non-white person, their head was always down, kind of. So that's what I grew up with. And in the schools, we never learned about African history. We learned about the white the settlers, the guys that came from Britain and Holland, and the Boers. We learned about their history. We never learned about just general African history. And so, that was kind of my upbringing. And so when I was in grade 8, Nelson Mandela was freed. And I'd say that was pretty much the beginning of my rebirth, but I was never really, I don't know if I'd call it a rebirth, but the beginning of my trying to understand this system, because up to that point, the police state was so strong that we never really knew about. Well, as a kid, I didn't. I'm sure my parents knew about it, but we didn't know. I didn't know what was happening. I just saw lots of military, lots of police, and I always just thought it was exciting seeing guns because I was a young kid and it was like cool, but I didn't realize what those things actually were doing until, when Mandela was freed and then going on. But I would still say I was pretty much not affected by the changes because we were well established in South Africa and we were well off, and we still had maids. And so I never really ever had people that were non-white that were economically equal to me, and I'd say probably education-wise equal to me, because the schools and the economic oppression for non-white people in South Africa was ridiculous, in that system. So it's going to take a long time, and it's still working its way out. But I would say the biggest thing that happened to me that I kind of realized like there was something, I was implicated in the system. And when I look back on it now, I shudder to think. But I was walking back from the school bus. I used to catch the bus from school, and I was coming down, and there was an older man, a Zulu man, and he must have been about 65. And he saw me, and he said, "Sawubona, boss." He was saying, "Hello, boss." And I said to him, "I'm not your boss." And he looked me straight in my eyes, and he said, "Yes, you are my boss." And he kept going. And it didn't matter what I said to that guy. He knew. And I'd never had to question it before that, right? Because it just, to me, seemed like my birthright. Like, I worked hard, my parents worked hard. So therefore, it was given, like, you know. But I never realized that, like, power differential that this 11-year-old boy had over a 65-year-old man. And as I kind of grew up a bit more through those years, I just started seeing that. So even with the schools integrating, it was still a matter of the kids that the non-whites that were coming in had more money, so it was kind of like, oh, well, they are wealthy non-whites. The other guys don't really care. But the other thing, when I came to Chicago, I came over to play rugby, and I just remember playing a rugby game in Detroit. And there was an African-American guy on the other team. I don't think he'd ever played rugby before, and I was playing with the Southside Irish rugby team. And I just remember them trying to kill this guy. And it made no sense to me. And I said to them at halftime, like, "Hey, guys, take it easy. He's a rookie. He's never played before." And they just used some language that you know, was kind of like, whoa. And they said to me, "Come on, you know, you hate the Kafirs as much as we do."
Oh, wait a minute. I think Justice might not know what that word means, and I think a lot of non-white listeners here might not know what Kafir means.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Kafir would be used in the same derogatory term as if a white person is referring to an African-American person as a nigger.
Thank you.
So Kafir is used as a term to degrade African people. It actually has the Arabic origin of non-believer, but it was kind of used as a derogatory term and still is used. And so, you know, that kind of opened my eyes to that. Hey, maybe in America, you guys haven't got it right. Because I thought, you know, we're coming to America. I'd heard about Martin Luther King. You know, I'd heard about a lot of those kind of things, and I was like, well, you know, it's going to be pretty liberal. But then I looked at Chicago, and I lived right near when the Robert Taylor homes were around, and I saw that, and I just saw that, you know, a lot of non-white people were living very much in the same conditions as African people were living under the system of apartheid. And that kind of worried me, but I never really had to do anything about it, right? I could still fall back on my whiteness, and it was easy to, I had the choice whether I could engage with it or not engage with it. And I would say for the most part I didn't engage with it. And then when I started my PhD program, I read a book by George Lipsitz called Possessive Investment in Whiteness, and he just kind of unpacks how white people, particularly in the United States, but I'd say it's pretty much global, how they economically have kind of plundered and taken the economic advantage of people of color. And then, so he unpacked that for me, and it really was just a punch in the stomach. And I'd say since then, I'm still very comfortable in my whiteness. You know, I still get to choose whether I talk about it or whether I engage other white people with it. But it was kind of like a real rude awakening to me once I read this guy's book, and then I spoke with other people in the College of Education and outside of the College of Education, and particularly when I spoke to friends of mine, white friends, and I told them, like, wow, man, this is messed up, like, check this out, and I gave them the facts and the figures that I had heard, and they were just like, no, that's bullshit, they choose it. They choose it if they want it, and in America, if you want it, you can get it. And so that's kind of what I've been pushing up against a lot, is like when I'm talking with people that I respect and people that I want to help me make sense of this stuff, white people, just saying nope, and conversation ends. So I would say I've obviously had more luck with talking with non-white people, because you know, non-white people have to deal with it every day, and you have to navigate this white system, whereas this world is made for me, it's been structured in a way that suits me. So I'm going through it kind of blindfolded. Whereas a person of color, as I'm seeing and as I'm learning, it's not quite as simple as that. So I'd say that's where I'm at. I definitely am still 100% part of the white supremacy thing, not saying the white supremacy oppression. And I'd say I'm globally implicated because I'm from South Africa. And everything that I've got to this point is due to privilege, because I'd say the 18th of April 1978, there were probably 5,000 non-white people born with as much talent and as much agency as me, but just weren't part of that system of white oppression. So that's kind of a background there.
Wanted to make sure I clarified this for our listeners. You said when you were coming home from school you were 11, and a non-white male person in Africa, who you said about 65 or so, said that you are my boss.
Yeah.
And would you say he was correct in saying that as a 65-year-old black person, non-white male in a system of white supremacy, an 11-year-old white child is your boss, that is accurate?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I mean, I'm not proud of it. I mean, I feel like horrible about it, but it's true, yes.
Okay. For this program, Context of White Supremacy, I have unfortunately concluded that we are in a system of racism, white supremacy. The definition that I use for white supremacy and racism is a global system of people who classify themselves as white and are dedicated to abusing and or subjugating everyone in the known universe whom they classify as not white. Do you think that such a system exists, and do you think that definition is accurate?
I would say that's an accurate definition from my experience, and I think it's got so sophisticated that people don't even have to think about it to make it happen. Well, no, that's not correct. Not think about it, but it's very easy to just do it.
When you say do it, you mean practice racism?
Practice racism,
okay.
yes.
Okay.
Practice, because people think of racism as lynching. People think of racism as apartheid. People think of racism as me going up to a black person and, like with that man saying, whatever, I don't respect what you're saying. You should call me John. Whereas there's history, and so I think the masses of white people, so the larger group of white people, follow those people that are actively doing things that oppress. But if you're in the audience, you're as implicated as if you're committing the crime.
Would you say that you are a racist white supremacist? And I define racist white supremacist as a white person who participates directly, indirectly, consciously, subconsciously, participates in mistreating individuals because they are not white. Would you say that you are a racist white supremacist according to that definition?
Yeah, it hurts real bad, but yes, I am.
Okay. Justice, do you have you thought of any questions while we've been talking? Justice, are you there? She was there. Hopefully she will say something. I'll ask a question and check on her mic. I wanted to go back. You said when Justice was asking you questions, you said that acting on your whiteness. I don't really know what that means. Could you break that down for us, hopefully, so that Justice can understand what acting on your whiteness means?
So acting on my whiteness would be, I'm just trying to think of that. I throw these things around, so it's good that you asked me. you see, it's so hard for me to separate my, me from my whiteness, because they are one. So I would pretty much say everything I do that is not asking questions about race and not questioning my my background and what I accept as truth is acting on it. So I would say just breathing, man, is actively participating in my whiteness, because if I wasn't here, I wouldn't be perpetuating it. So part of it is my sons have no non-white friends. Okay, and that is something that I should be acting against. But that takes effort, and so I bring, I take them to friends of mine of color, and I have them around, but it should be a more consistent thing. So I'd say that's acting on it. When I am walking down the street and an African American man comes behind me, and I put my hands in my pocket and I hold my key in case he jumps me, which is absolutely ludicrous, that's acting on my whiteness. When I read the news about South Africa and my gut reaction when the politicians are going, when things are going badly, to say, that feeling of during the white government it wasn't like this, the gut reaction, my almost, in sports you call it muscle memory, like my instant reaction, I would say, is, so I may not act on it, but it's there and it's influencing what I do.
I wasn't interrupting. I was.
Oh yeah, no, I'm just trying to think of more. I live in a predominantly white neighborhood that used to be a very strong African American neighborhood, and it's kind of, how that regentrification happens and the white people moved in, housing prices went up. The choice of where I'm living is me acting on my whiteness. The classes and the papers that I write at university and the work that I do, I can choose which I'm going to do. Fortunately, some of the time I go with classes that are, up till this point, I go with stuff that's just going to get me through. Instead of really challenging through education what I know, because that's the only way I feel like I'm going to really make any kind of difference and not pass my white supremacy on to my boys, which I think it's already passed on, because they were born, even though their mother is Latina, they look white. So it's passed on, but the way that they navigate this world and the decisions that they make, I'm hoping that I'm not passing my legacy on to them.
Very interesting. Justice, are you there? If you're there, you can speak up for us. Okay, I'm going to check her mic. Justice, if you're listening, you should hang up, call back in, and I will put you back on. We'll see if that corrects it. So go ahead and hang up and just call back in, and I will put your mic back on so that you can ask questions, because I know she had several things she wanted to ask.
Okay.
You said John. I'll make an effort to say John. I told you I was going to do it in reference to
That's all good.
So, John. Let's see. If you could, you said that when you lived in South Africa, you would see non-white people. They would be in subservient roles, maid, garden boy, very paternalistic term. Garden boy,
very much.
Maid, and that the non-white people that you would see, the black people, their heads would be down. They wouldn't look you in the face.
Typically,
Okay. Now that you are in Washington State and you've traveled a little bit more, do you see that same sort of behavior and not looking white people in the eyes and that sort of thing, do you see that same sort of behavior worldwide in the non-white people that you encounter? And if you could give details about how you've seen that play out in other parts.
So how I've seen it play out here is not so much the, littler kids, the kids that I interact and the teenagers that I interact don't, if I go into and I visit a school with white kids, they'll talk with me. Whereas when I go into a school and I'm visiting or I'm watching a teacher teaching, the African American kids or the non-white kids typically won't interact with me, particularly the African immigrants or the South American immigrants or Mexican immigrants. Very, very coy, I would say, don't really interact with me until I really try and interact with them. Whereas the white kids will pretty much come and talk to me straight away. The other thing is I don't really see a whole lot of African American people in business, so when I go into a coffee shop or when I go into a shop, the manager is not African American or Latino, or the manager is not non-white. Usually the people on the floor selling things are non-white. When I look at who's picking up my garbage, it's typically non-white people. When I look at who is in the kitchen or who is building the buildings, it's typically non-white. I mean, the only place I've been to in America where I saw white people doing, that kind of behind the scenes, pretty much lower level work is in Montana. And I think that's purely just a product of the fact that there's not a whole lot of non-whites there. Apart from the Native Americans, I struggle to distinguish sometimes between Native Americans and white people. But in Montana, in the kitchen it was white people, in the supermarkets packing the stuff it was white people. So I'd say that's how I've seen it play out here. And most of the non-white people that I've seen, particularly African American people that I've seen in my time in the United States, have been, though, kind of not, I'm trying to think of a way to describe this, like business people in suits or, teaching in front of the classroom. I mean, there's a classic example. When I go into schools, the teachers are white, the principal's white, and the kids in front of them are non-white. So the teaching assistants are African American or Latino, but the actual teachers and the principals are all white. And so I see it here too in that same way of, like, the white people get the top tier of work and access and stuff, where the non-whites don't. I mean, you see it once in a while. Like when I went to Atlanta, it was a little bit different. But Atlanta reminded me a lot of home. It was kind of like, it was very segregated in my mind, what I was looking at. But the people that were non-white seemed to be doing okay. You saw like managers in restaurants there, or you see like shop owners that were African American. Whereas here, I just don't see that, and it just seems way more passive in Washington State. And then Chicago was just very segregated. And I'd say Chicago, I saw just like a whole lot more active kind of intergroup or intra-group kind of separation. And, a concrete example, I was at Comiskey Park. I think it's called U.S. Cellular Park now. And the one side of the railway line is Irish, white Catholics, and the other side was African American, and I was told point blank, do not cross that line because you'll get shot. I mean, which is absolutely ludicrous, really. I mean, I could pretty much get shot anywhere, but just that seeing and hearing that type of thing. And another thing is in the nightclubs, in the bars. When I go into a bar, I don't see non-white people sitting down having a drink, talking about politics and the terrible economic situation and how bad Katrina was. I just don't see that. And so So again, where I live, it's predominantly white, but just next to us is the Central District and International District. So it's not like it's only white people living there. So, so that's what I've seen in my time here.
For the people who are listening in who are not familiar with yes, you're back with us, Justice. Thank you for calling back in. The people
I just thought it wasn't on the line. Sorry about that.
All good. We got you. For the people who are listening in, if you're not familiar with Seattle, the Central District and the International District, it used to be that lots of non-white people lived in both of those areas. The Central District actually used to be white people in this area used to call the Central District the Colored District.
Okay.
You had lots of black people there. International District, you have more so-called Asian people there. But as he said, Mr. Delport, you have so-called gentrification, a.k.a. racial dislocation. The non-white people are being tossed out of those areas. Lots of white people are coming in, housing prices going up, schools getting better, all the stuff that generally goes along with non-white people being replaced by white people in a specific area. I want to go to Justice to see if she has any questions, but I also wanted to point out I find it fascinating that you said Atlanta reminded you of South Africa, because I used to live in Atlanta, and I tell people all the time it is a horrible place for a black male to be. Yes, you have a high concentration of black people, which probably adds to it being a terrible place to be in a system of white supremacy, because you have tons of victims piled up in an area. Yes, you will see some black people who do have nice cars and do have money. You'll see black police officers and that sort of thing. But you are in a state that up until very recently, they had the Confederate flag on their state flag. Very obvious symbol, in my view, of racism, white supremacy, and you see it staunchly in the segregation in Atlanta. I mean, you could just go look at where a lot of the so-called historically black colleges are. Morehouse, Clark, Spelman, all these are piled up in the same area. The neighborhoods are terrible. I mean, they look like slums. This is where Morehouse and everything is. Then if you head to Buckhead, where most of the white people are, posh, gorgeous, doesn't look bad at all. But I found that fascinating. Justice, please, if you have questions, go right ahead.
Who teaches you how to practice racism, white supremacy?
Is that who teaches me to?
Yes. Who teaches you how to practice racism, white supremacy?
So, Justice, growing up, I would say it was my parents, the teachers that I had in school, the friends that I had, and my friends' parents. To act so I was taught it, and I've learned it, and now it's a behavior that I've acquired. I was born with it, but I would say my school teachers, the TV, the TV even now still has the TV and music have a strong influence of teaching me about, white supremacy and how to keep it going. Trying to think of other teachers. The church elders, and when I was growing up, talking about, a zebra should be with a zebra, a gazelle should be with a gazelle. You shouldn't have a zebra with a gazelle. And that was when I was particularly interested in a girl of color in my school. And I went to the youth leader and I asked him, what do you think? And he basically said that thing. So I'd say through those types of lessons, I've been taught it. Does that answer your question, Justice?
Yes. Did you mistreat any non-white people in South Africa? If you did, how and why?
Well, that's a good question, Justice. Okay. So I'm not laughing because it's funny. I'm laughing because it's uncomfortable. In South Africa, yes. I would say, let me talk about how treating the lady who stayed in my house and actually had a big part in raising me, Regina, who would have been called a maid or a girl or a nanny. So she cleaned the house and cooked. There were times where I wasn't very nice to her, and I called her a muntu, which is a derogatory term to call a black person in South Africa. That other word I used, kafa, I'd use that at her when she wouldn't give me what I wanted. When I was playing sports against or other teams and a player tackled me or something, anytime something went wrong or somebody I felt was being mean to me, I would straight away go to the fact that they were black. And I mean, for example, even now, Justice, it's if somebody does something to me that I don't like, often jump straight to the fact that they are non-white. I remember in Chicago being cut off by a car, and it was an African-American person, and the stuff that came out of my mouth was just ridiculously racist and mean, and I'm glad the guy didn't hear me because he would have beaten the hell out of me. And then playing a rugby game, I got tackled really hard by a black guy from South Africa, and my first reaction was, "Hey man, I've got 5 of you at home," which is when a person is vulnerable or being what's the word? Kind of when the limelight's on you and you feel embarrassed and you lash out. I think that speaks to the true, deep down inside your deep-rooted belief and what you've been taught. When you're in a tough situation, there's a lot of people who have been in tough situations that have not reacted in the way that I do sometimes. And so and why, as I'm learning through, as I'm being educated and as I'm opening my mind, I'm realizing that a lot of it's got to do with how I was brought up, how I want to, in some ways, if I totally question this stuff, then that means that I'm questioning the privilege that I have. And so if we lose the privilege, if I lose my privilege and I say everybody, and everybody becomes equal, does that mean I lose what I've got? So I think that might be part of the why. Also, growing up, I saw very significant role models of mine treating black people badly, shouting at them, talking down to them, pushing them, calling them stupid. And then when I came to America, I would say seeing the rugby guys that I played with treating people like that in a very similar fashion, not always at the person but about the person. I think that is part of my teaching and part of why I do it, which is shameful and embarrassing, and telling you that as a 10-year-old, I feel incredibly humiliated by it. But I can't say that after we finish this conversation or when I've got my PhD, if I get tackled by a black guy, that my gut reaction is not going to be to say something about his race, because it's so deeply ingrained in me. Does that answer? That wasn't very nice, but that's just kind of trying to be honest with you.
Okay. I'll think of more questions.
Okay.
Wow, I found that very interesting. I know the chat room closed for a second. It should be open if you refresh your browser or the page that you're on. Chat room should be open. It closed for a second, but I think that's taken care of. Again, John Delport, our guest, Context of White Supremacy. I found that very interesting. Several of the things that you just shared. It was a white person, recent alumnus of the University of Washington. He agreed to come on the program and speak with us honestly. He admitted to being a racist white supremacist. talked about different ways that he practices racism, and he said something very similar to what you just said about the way you responded when you were tackled in the rugby game. He's in Korea right now, so-called Korea, South Korea.
Okay.
And he said that being in an environment where non-white people are suspicious of him because he's a white person, and being in an environment where him being a white person means that people don't like him and don't think well of him, non-white people, he said it made him want to be racist. And he said that was a problem he was having to work on. It made him want to be racist even more. And what you just said sounds very similar. And I wanted to ask, do you think that for white people, if non-white people start to show that they have an understanding of racism, white supremacy, if they start to put some dents in the system of white supremacy to where white people feel vulnerable, feel threatened, that this system might be under attack, do you think that will encourage white people or motivate them to want to be even more racist and explicitly racist?
You know, you try and believe in the humanity of people, but you know, so I've had kind of 2 years of questioning it, so I'm still very young in this, like trying to understand this whole thing. But I would say when people honestly start looking at it, I think you probably would find more active, explicit kind of the racism. But you know, it's kind of like if somebody's being actively racist, you can talk about it. I don't know. As a white person, I can. So if I now, for example, I'll give you an example of it. I'm talking to a South African friend of mine in a bar, and we are talking about. I'm telling her what I'm studying. You know, that I'm interested in this issue of race and white supremacy and white oppression, and you know that in South Africa it was terrible. And she said, again, the kaffir's a kaffir. Even my boss says so, and he's from England. And when I took the nanny, she was a nanny. When I took my kid to Jamboree, I took him home when I saw the black kid there, even if he was a rich kid, because a black's a black. But as blatant and as just cold-hearted as that was, I could still say to her, I could then engage in a conversation with her. But you know, usually when I'm talking with, you know, so I'll go out to supper with my wife's a physician, and I'll go out to supper with these doctors and stuff, predominantly white doctors, and they ask me, what are you doing? That's usually the first conversation, because what, you're not working? Why are you studying? So I'll be like, well, I'm looking at issues of race and class and how to, particularly in special education, try and make a difference to kids of color. Conversation lasts about 3 seconds. Oh, that's interesting, cool. Boom, conversation's done. Whereas with this girl at the bar, as horrible and as nasty as what she was saying, it was like, thank you for being honest. Let's, you know, that's exactly what I feel, but I realize that feeling is not just.
Wait a minute, you said that's exactly what you feel.
That like my gut reaction when I'm talking about my muscle memory.
Okay.
When I'm somewhere with my kids and a non-white family comes in, my visceral reaction, my immediate reaction typically is one not the same as if a white person comes in. So it's like I understood where she was coming from because we were brought up in the same society. But like I said to her, you need to just
What same society?
That in South Africa. She is from South Africa. So yeah, she was actually from the same town as me. She was Afrikaans and I'm English, so there's slight differences there, but for all intents and purposes, it was the same upbringing. And, you know, then I put forward to her, I said, like, what about Nelson Mandela? What about Thabo Mbeki? And kind of went through the list of non-white people that I'm learning about that are not what we were fed when we were kids. And she was like, no. And that's when she said, even my boss from England says black people are all stupid. You know, so we didn't get anywhere, and I didn't get anywhere because I'm not, wise enough to really, and I'm not changed sufficiently to start helping people understand this, because I'm trying to understand it. But she, you know, her being open like that. So back to your question, is it going to make people be more explicit? I would say probably. I mean, I would see it, but maybe that'd let us work on it more, rather than just implicitly complying to what's going on.
Oh, I agree. I agree wholeheartedly. In fact, what you said earlier about the 65-year-old black male in South Africa who saw you when you were 11 and said, "You're my boss." I think non-white people, when it's very explicit, the way it was in so-called South Africa during formal apartheid white supremacy, in this area of the world during so-called Jim Crow, when it's real explicit, when they got the signs up and everything, non-white people are a lot less confused. Non-white people have a much better understanding of, oh yeah, white people, that's the problem. System of white supremacy, yes. Any white person, including an 11-year-old child, that is your boss in a system of white supremacy. When the signs come down and you get a non-white person in the White House, or Nelson Mandela becomes president, non-white people tend to get very confused into thinking, oh, wait a minute, it's not racism, it's not white supremacy, that's, you know, oh, that's over, that's not the problem, it's, you know, capitalism, or it's communist, or anything but racism, white supremacy. So I have complete agreement. I would much rather have it just be very explicit and have your friend calling everyone kafirs and niggers or whatever else, so we can all be in the know that, okay, this is what's going on, this is the problem, this is what we should be working on.
Exactly,
Justice, do you have some other questions that you've thought of?
Yes.
Go ahead.
What do you do when you are around white people who practice racism, white supremacy?
Justice, could you repeat that? So what do I do when I'm around white people, and then I missed the last part?
I said who practice racism, white supremacy.
Okay, so when Justice, so going back to what we spoke about in the beginning, just being white means we're part of the white supremacy. So I would say all of my white friends are part of it. When I have the more vocal, and you know, it's interesting because when you get together with white people, particularly in Seattle, where people feel like they liberal and they open-minded and stuff, but when you get in like smaller groups with white people, that's when you tend to see the more, you tend to hear more explicit racist talk. Particularly what I hear around is immigration. So geared towards more the... sorry, say that again, Justice?
I said, what's immigration?
Immigration, so people that come from other countries and live in the United States. Okay, so around immigration, and when I hear people talking, particularly Americans, talking about, how they must go back, and, it's not their place, those types of things. But I would say, it's really hard actually to hear people talk about kind of racist stuff in Seattle. In Chicago, I heard it a lot more, talking about the black person at work who was taking advantage of the welfare system, or the one, because I worked with policemen, I played rugby with policemen and firemen, and so, and they were on the south side, and so just the stuff that they would talk about and how they would talk about African American people in particular, sometimes around Latino, so predominantly Mexican people. They would talk just stuff like, they just live off the welfare system. They don't care. If they worked hard, they could do better. that kind of thing. But in Seattle, Justice, people don't talk about it. But the thing is, if we look about where we're meeting, like, so I go into a bar, or if I go into a restaurant, I don't see any other non-white people in there with us. When I look at walking around the neighborhood, I don't see a whole lot of, and I'm with friends, I don't see a whole lot of other non-white people. When I'm playing rugby, when I'm at university, and I'm in discussions with people, I'm not having discussions with non-white people. So I would say that is where it's in Seattle in particular. It's harder to it's not harder to be aware, but actually that white supremacy is so implicit and it's so just part of everything that we do that it's hard to recognize. Because we're talking about sitting at a table talking about Sudan and how terrible things are, and then I'll talk about Zimbabwe and how bad things are there, and that's true. Things are terrible there right now. But then we just got to look at how things are here, and we don't talk about that. And so that to me is an example of how white supremacy is acted out in the social groups that I hang out in. Does that answer?
Yes.
Okay.
Speak up real loud, please, Justice.
Yes.
Do you have some more questions, Justice?
Yes.
Okay.
Why do white people call names to non-white people?
I think it is the easiest way. That saying, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never harm me. And I think that's nonsense.
Yeah.
I think words are very powerful, and when you look at being threatened, and threatened is very relative. So threatened in some people, you might think of it as somebody's trying to come and hit you, but my sense of fear is very different around non-white people. And I would argue that a lot of white people's fear and that threat is purely often just based on the presence of a non-white person. So when there is that fear or threat, people retaliate, and they don't retaliate because they haven't been attacked, but people will use words because it is quick and it is easy and it is very debilitating and humiliating to the person that they are doing it to.
Okay, that answers my question.
Do you have some more questions, Justice?
Not right now.
Okay. One of the people in the chat room, I think a non-white person, but I could be incorrect, wanted to know how you can help students, since you said you work in the school system and you're in the College of Education at the University of Washington. How can you assist students, especially non-white students, if your instincts at your core, you are a racist white supremacist?
You mean that's something I ask myself every day, and I've asked many professors, like, why, how can I do this, given that that is who I am? That saying, you can't teach an old dog new tricks.
Mm-hmm. I'm
hoping is untrue, because I'm really immersed in this and trying to understand. So the way I see that I can help students is by, first of all, being honest about myself.
Mm-hmm.
And who I am and how I play in the white supremacy, because I've tried the conversation with particularly students at the university, and it just most of the times it falls flat, because I think I've got to change first and understand me first and talk from me, not point fingers at them and say you shouldn't blah blah blah, because I've got to talk about me in the first person, and if they choose to take it up, then hopefully they do. The other thing that I'm trying to understand more is the legal system around education, in particular around discipline and special education, where students of color are significantly overrepresented and misclassified, which has big ramifications for their trajectories. So I am trying to understand the law, the system that protects me, the law that kind of keeps this white supremacy going, I'd say. It's got a lot to do with the law. Mm-hmm. And so I'm trying to understand the law so that when I am working with families of color, in particular around special education, that as an insider, I know the law and I know how that law is enacted, and I can find legal reasons and legal ways to hopefully help families stop getting the schools from not placing kids in special education if they don't need it, and for them not expelling and suspending kids if it's unnecessary. But I've got to have a better understanding of this legal system. So that's kind of the second step. It's going on at the same time because I've got to finish this PhD at some point. But the first step is me understanding who I am, so that even though, because I don't believe that fundamentally within my gut I'll be able to change my socialization, but I do believe that the way that I act and the way that I treat people and just because, you can feel something, but you don't have to act on it. And so understanding that link, I think, is what's going to help me. And that is done through, particularly actually through meeting with families of color that are involved in the special education system and just seeing the pain and the hurt that the school system puts on these families. And that just makes me ashamed. And so I'm the type of person that if I feel shame, I'm going to try and work against it. And so by these families allowing me to ally with them, I become part of the solution, hopefully the solution for them. Because again, like I say, the special education system in the United States it's just a messed up system for kids of color.
Do you tell the students that you work with, I'm really focusing on the non-white students, that, hey, I'm a racist, white supremacist, we're in a system of racism, white supremacy, you should be real suspicious of me and really any white person. Do you tell them that?
Not as direct as that. I point out that the school has been unfair because they are I'm working with a family from Somalia right now. I've said that the school's been unfair because you don't speak the language and because you're non-white. But no, I haven't been as direct as that.
Okay. Do you think that would be number one, truthful, and number two, do you think that would be constructive for non-white people to hear from white people such as yourself? Hey, I'm a racist, I'm a white supremacist, we are in a system of white supremacy that is responsible for why you're having all of these problems. Mm-hmm. You should be suspicious of me, and you should be suspicious of any white person, regardless of what they are saying and doing.
Yes, I would say that is I would also say particularly for the graduate students that I work with. Non-white graduate students, particularly African American students, I would say yes. With the families that I work with, I think particularly with the Somali family, it might be lost in translation. I'm not quite sure how, but I mean, I don't only work with Somali families, so that is something that I should be telling them, yes, because the other factors is that I get involved and I help to a certain degree, but then I leave, and that's a pattern you find too, I suppose. In South Africa, you see it in Africa, you see it with NGOs. These cats come over, we're going to solve the problem, and then we pull out 1 year later, and the people are still facing it. So it just, yes, that's a good phrase, a good way to do it. You should, I'm a white person, I'm implicated in it. You should be suspicious, but I'm here to help you. Let's just see what we can do, but you should continually question. I mean, I think that is the way I see it, is you should continually question what's being given. And in special education, I see that a lot. And education, actually, in general, is families of color aren't given the option to actually really question what they're given. Well, I suppose they can question it, but they can't, if they fight against it, then they're that parent that's a troublemaker. And the system is very quick to shut them down.
Oh, for sure.
So, yeah.
I did want to comment, because I've seen where white people, I suspect this is white people instinctively practicing white supremacy consciously and or subconsciously. They tend to try to toss that word suspicion out and replace it with other terms like question or be skeptical. And I think suspicion is the best word because you said it's instinctual. It's been done for so long. It's been done so well. It's just an instinct to practice racism, white supremacy. Your question and your questions as a non-white person and your line of thinking when you have contact with a white person should really come from suspicion that, hey, this white person is probably racist, and or this white person just told me that they're racist white supremacists. I should really be thinking in an extraordinarily suspicious manner every day as long as we're in a system of white supremacy.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it's hard for me to hear that because my gut reaction is like, but I want to help. As in, like, I want to work. I want to move beyond that, but it's impossible to move beyond that. Is what I've said before. So, i.e., my reaction to it is like, but then how am I going to help? But I can still help, and I can still do the work that I want to do, but I have to be explicit with, so that makes sense. It's uncomfortable, but it makes sense.
The system of white supremacy is way uncomfortable, and I suspect that the non-white people experience a great deal more discomfort than you do with your children in the $900 school and the $2,000 nanny. I don't even have a phone, so I suspect our level of discomfort, great big margin between the two. I wanted to touch, because you used the term pull out, and that's a lot of sexual implications for me in that term.
Pull out.
In the NGOs, pull out of.
Pull out.
That's kind of a sexual double entendre, and I hear white people talk that way about Africa all the time, frequently, explicitly and implicitly, on a pretty regular basis about going to frolic in Africa and help, quote unquote. You said earlier your wife is Latina. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Is she a white person or a non-white person?
She's non-white. I mean, she's her friends are predominantly white, but she grew up Latina. I mean, so I would say Latino, but living within the white middle class existence.
Okay.
Do you teach her about?
Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say that. Do you teach your wife about white supremacy?
Well, she is one justice that I would say very much brought that American. So in America, I hear a lot that you.
Hello.
Hello.
I don't want the Irish seed. All I need is just
no,
a yes or a no.
No, I don't. Did that come through?
Yes, it did get my answer. Thank you.
Hello?
Hello?
Oh, sorry, Justice. I didn't answer the question. The question was, do I teach my wife about white supremacy?
Oh, you did answer my question. You
Oh,
said
okay.
no.
I said no. Okay.
Did you say no?
Yes, I did say no. Yeah, I do not. I talk about it all the time. She calls it my white guilt. I do talk about the white power stuff and what me being white and trying to make sense of it. I do talk with her about it, but I don't. I wouldn't say I teach her about it. I think she's a lot more wiser about it than I am.
How is that?
Because she's had to live it. I mean, she's a Latina woman that came. She was raised by her mom. She's a woman, so I think this world is also not out to help the women as much as they are the men. So her lived experience, her experience in the world is very different to mine. And so when I talk to her about trying to understand my whiteness and my racial ideas, she at times will be very impatient with it because she just hears me talking what she calls white guilt, just feeling guilty about being white. So we don't, unfortunately, because I think she could teach me a lot more, engage in as many conversations around it.
How can she teach you a lot more when she's non-white and you're white?
Because she's lived it. I haven't lived it. I haven't actually. So like I said right in the beginning, I can look and I can see, and I can choose to look and see my whiteness, where she's had to live it as a Latino person. She's had to live my system on her. So she can teach me, like when I talk with African American friends at university about their experience in the world and their experience in life, it's very different to mine, and it helps me understand, because the books can only tell me so much. The books can only show me, when it's far removed, but when I'm actually talking to somebody, their experience tells me more, and that's just the way that I learn, is through talking to people. And so my wife, because she was on the other side, she was not raised white like I was. She had to live on this side of the system. Does that make sense?
It doesn't make sense. I'm a little confused.
Okay.
Do you think you can explain that?
Yeah. So, I appreciate you pushing me on this. So basically, I'm thinking, so she could teach me a lot in the sense of, maybe teach is the wrong word. She could expose me to how white supremacy works. So she couldn't teach me about white supremacy because I am the enactor.
She knows what expose means, if you could.
Oh, okay. Yeah. She can show it to me. She can say, look what you're doing now. So when I'm making a joke about an African-American person, or when I am saying something derogatory about an African-American person that's just cut me off, or I'm too scared to go into a certain area because there's predominantly Latino or African-American people, she can point it out to me and show me where my whiteness is making me act in a certain way.
Where your racism, white supremacy, I think that would be a better term than whiteness.
White supremacy, yeah.
Okay.
So does that make sense, Justice?
I still really don't get it. I mean,
okay.
You're a white person and she's a non-white person, so how can she give you the information of more on white supremacy?
I suppose she can give me a different understanding of it. Like I haven't lived what she's had to live, so she can't tell me about it. You're right. She can't tell me about how being white supremacy. she's not going to tell me about that, but she can tell me how she, her experiences as a woman, as a Mexican woman in the United States studying to be a doctor. She can tell me that, and kind of listening to her story, I can see as a person that I know that's been affected by white supremacy. When I read it in a book or when I look at a documentary, that stuff always, I'm like, wow, that's crazy or that's interesting. But when I hear it from a person that I know, it just helps me understand white supremacy better.
Then why are you with her when you don't talk about white supremacy?
Because she's not as interested in it as I am. So we talk about it. But it's not it's not a topic of conversation that we have a lot. And I've had to respect her not wanting to talk about it. So yeah, that's a bit of a lame answer, but she is not as interested in talking with it about me as I am, because I'm currently I'm learning a lot about it, so I'm wanting guidance through it. But I think part of her is it's your journey, you do it. So it's a lame answer, Justice, but we just don't talk about it.
Okay.
You have more questions, Justice?
Yes, I do. Why is everywhere I go, I see white people in magazines, movies, episodes, everywhere? Why is that? Why do white people do not show non-white people on those things?
I would say because the people that publish the magazine and the people that create the movies, they know that the society we live in is suited for me. The magazines and the heroes and stuff they will have to see, they need to look like me. Because if I'm in charge of the magazine company or if I'm in charge of the film company, it's going to look like me. So yeah, that's kind of the answer that I have.
Did you say white privilege earlier?
Yes, I did. Sorry, I meant white supremacy. I interchanged the terms. I'm still working out the distinctions. Yeah.
Okay. If you did,
I've used white privilege a couple of times.
What do you mean by white privilege? When you say it?
Okay, so what I mean is I keep moving the phone from my ear to my mouth so I can be loud. So let me just answer it and then I'll put the phone back. So white privilege to me, the way I've made sense of it is I was born with talents and agency like you are. You were born with talents and agency. Agency meaning things that you can do that you were born with and things that you've learned that help you do things. And so I was born with a lot of talents, but those talents were not sufficient by themselves. I needed a system that was set up that helped my talents get exposed and get to the front. So, for example, with rugby, I was a good rugby player, but I was able to go to a school that had rugby. I was able to do fitness stuff and get coaches that were good rugby coaches. And so I got the opportunity to travel with rugby. But if I had been born non-white and just as talented, even more talented, I probably wouldn't have had that opportunity. So the privilege is what actually allows me to make the agency work. Does that answer it?
I can't really understand you. Well,
Is it it's the word? Okay. So when you're born with like.
Hang on. I can understand
Hello?
you, but it's hello.
Hello, I'm here.
Oh, okay. I can understand you, but I just. Do you think you can say that a little bit more clear?
Okay.
Like where I can understand?
I was born and I was relatively intelligent, so I was kind of smart, and I worked hard at sports and at academics. And now I'm sitting at the University of Washington doing a PhD, which is quite like people are like, wow, that's cool. Look at him. He's doing a PhD. He's got a master's degree. He lives in a nice house. His son's got a good schools. But when I look at how I got to where I am, Justice, it wasn't just because I was relatively smart and I was good at sports. It had a lot to do with because I was born white, and that white is the privilege. It's the thing that in white supremacy that we're talking about. The white supremacy is the way that those talents and smartness gets put up on a pedestal and gets places. Whereas as I'd say is there are a lot of people that are my age that are African in South Africa that aren't in a PhD program, that didn't travel the world playing rugby, and they're just as talented and as smart as me, but because of the privilege that I had as a white person born in South Africa, I could get to a PhD. Does that help at all, or is it just as confusing?
It helps. Thank you.
Okay.
I'll think of more.
Okay.
Okay. I want to go back to we were talking about your spouse being a non-white person.
Yes.
And you said that she doesn't want to talk about it being racism, white supremacy. And
yeah.
You said she's not as interested in this subject matter. For me, one of the core things that I talk about, one of the core things I have studied in great depth is sexual intercourse between non-white people and white people. And I have concluded that that is totally incorrect under the system of white supremacy for a myriad of reasons, but two central being the non-white person, all non-white people are in a vulnerable and subordinate position to white people. That's number one. And the system really encourages non-white people to not be honest with themselves anyway. When a non-white person is in a sexual relationship with a white person, it really goes off the charts in terms of the non-white person being confused and dishonest about the system of racism, white supremacy, and in many instances being completely unwilling to talk about it. You said your non-white spouse doesn't want to talk about it. How do you feel about that? My view, it is totally incorrect, and the non-white person is really being exploited every time this happens. I mean, you are an admitted racist, white supremacist in a sexual relationship with a non-white person.
I was expecting this question. I can't say I prepared for it well. So I don't know. My thing is, and I think you're more studied on this and more knowledgeable around it. My feeling on my wife being non-white and me being in a sexual relationship, and this is probably a cop-out that you get from a lot of white people using the biological similarities as an excuse where it was used for so many years as a way to separate. But as far as the way I see it is that my wife and I are the same. We're both people. And so I do not see her being non-white and me being white. Her experience and her life might have been as a non-white, but when we together, she's my wife. She's Lisa. So I don't really have an answer for what you're asking, unfortunately. Is it wrong for whites to sleep with non-whites, so me to sleep with a non-white? I don't see any problem with it, Gus, but I can understand why it is seen as problematic and as an issue.
Do you see any problems with a racist, white supremacist being in a sexual relationship with a non-white person?
Do I see a problem with that?
Yes, sir.
I mean, there's a lot behind that question. Depends. It's consent. If it is two adults that love each other, then I would say from that are going into it equally. I would say.
Whoa! Because that word is huge. We're not going into this equally. We have a racist, white supremacist, and a non-white person in a system of white supremacy. We are not going into this equally. So let me shoot that again. Do you see any problems with a racist, white supremacist being in a sexual relationship with a non-white person in the system of white supremacy?
Well, when I'm talking about me, John Delport, with my wife Lisa, no. So I suppose then I have to extrapolate that out and say no.
Okay. Can you explain why you don't think there are any problems with a racist white supremacist being in a sexual relationship with a non-white person under the system of white supremacy?
I mean, you start me here, guys. It's hard because I'm in it. It's I understand exactly why it is problematic, but when I look at me and I look at my wife, I don't see her as having come in as a victim.
Is she a victim of white supremacy?
To a degree, because she's Latino.
I'd appreciate if we could get clarity on this one. This should be a yes or a no. So, as a non-white person,
yes,
okay.
Yes, she is.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that.
Yeah. So I just do not see that the relationship that I have with her as being bad for her or bad for me or bad for people of color. That's just my personal opinion, but I understand the knowledge base in which this question has been asked.
Okay. Your answers, your responses to these questions, even that last question, is your wife a non-white person? Is she a victim of white supremacy? The fact that it took you quite a while to say yes, for me, very significant as to why this is totally incorrect, particularly given the answers that you've given earlier in this program. Mm-hmm. You said your instinct at the core, you have been conditioned and function even subconsciously at times as a racist white supremacist, but now somehow magically being married to a non-white person in a sexual relationship with a non-white person, that's not the case anymore. I don't see her as a non-white person.
I see her as a non-white person.
You said, wait a minute, you just said, I don't see her as a non-white person where people, you said the whole
right.
Yeah, see, that's what I mean. That's what I mean. This is, we're way off the charts of being rational right now. This program, I feel, has been very productive. You've been, I feel, very honest with us. I think Justice has felt sometimes that your responses haven't been as clear for her, but I do think you've at least made an effort to clear things up so she can understand what you're saying. But this, man, this is Justice. Do you think his responses have been clear, where you're understanding what he's saying, or do you think he's been confusing in what he's been saying about having a non-white wife?
A little confusing for me.
Okay. It's been very confusing for me, too. Well, actually, I'm not really confused. This is what I expect when I encounter non-white people and white people in sexual relationships. Just mass distortion, confusion. I do not expect anything logical because, now we're not on business. Hey, this is, just our personal thing and all this other stuff. And you said your wife, she doesn't want to talk about this. I think the fact that she's in a sexual relationship with a white person has a big impact on her not wanting to talk about this. I mean, at what point does does your wife know that you're an admitted racist?
Yeah.
Okay. I could see why she might not feel comfortable talking about this, because at some point, questions might have to come up around, well, wait a minute, what is going on here? Why am I in a relationship with an admitted racist? I mean, at some point, that's got to come up. I would think for both people. If I'm a racist, what am I doing with a victim of white supremacy? What am I doing here for the non-white person? Especially for the non-white person, what am I doing here with an admitted racist? I mean, he's admitted to calling people kafirs and doing all these things and grew up in South Africa. I mean, what is going on here? And I just feel it has a totally debilitating effect on the non-white person's ability to be honest about racism, white supremacy. They do exactly what you said your wife does. I don't want to talk about this. I'm not interested in talking about this. I have other things I want to. That's your thing. You can do your white guilt or whatever. And I feel like that is totally counterproductive and really destructive for non-white people, victims of white supremacy, making an effort to replace white supremacy with justice. We got to be able to talk about this, and we got to be able to talk about this honestly.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think your wife, she's demonstrating an appropriate level of suspicion of you as an admitted white supremacist? Do you think she's suspicious of you?
She's suspicious of me, but I don't know if it's because I'm white, because I'm weird. Well, I mean, like I said to Justice, her calling me out on things that I do, I don't know if that's a sign of suspicion, but no.
Okay. Yeah. See, that is a huge problem. Non-white people just, in my view, do not demonstrate an appropriate level of suspicion of white people. That is one of the biggest problems that I see, and really shows just how well the system of white supremacy works. Non-white people are more suspicious of me than they are of white people, which, I mean, and this is disgraceful. The fact that this is something we don't have to argue about. You know this, that with non-white people, they will argue about this and say, no, that's not true. Yes, it is. I see this play out every day, where white people, admitted racists, can do the exact same work that I'm attempting to do, can say the exact same things I'm saying. Just because they're white, they will have more credibility. Non-white people will listen to them more and will even be pleased and just think they're the best person in the world if they're white in doing this. Me being a non-white person, I don't get that same level of respect. I don't even get courtesy most of the time from non-white people. In my view, that really is one of the most extreme ways that white people practice racism, white supremacy, in engaging in sexual intercourse with non-white people. I think it's Monsters Ball every time. I don't know if you've seen the film Monsters Ball. Have you seen that?
Yeah, she's the psychiatrist, right?
Halle Berry.
Yeah, she's a psychiatrist. She's married to a white guy.
No, she's not a psychiatrist in Monsters Ball. She's like poor, struggling. Her husband gets electrocuted, gets the death sentence.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's monsters. In fact, the film about the Truth and Reconciliation trials in South Africa, it's called In My Country. Did you see that?
I've read the book, In My Country of My Skull.
Yeah. There's a film based on that book, and there's a sexual relationship between a non-white person and a white person in the middle of this, which I found. Oh, did that really happen? Is that in the book too?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Now that is, oh man, I think that is extraordinary. That's
so. So then, I'm with you, and you're gonna school me on this. I get it, but where does love come into it? Like, I truly love my wife.
What does that mean? Can you explain what love means?
What love means, that I would lay down my life for her, that I want her to be happy, that my goal in life is to make sure that she's happy and that my kids are happy.
Hello?
Hello? Yeah, we hear Justice.
Okay, I have a question.
Yes.
If you want her to be happy, then why... I said, if you want her to be happy, then why do not tell her about white supremacy? I think that will make her very happy if you tell her about white supremacy.
You know, I do, Justice. I do. Maybe I need to try harder. So I will try harder, and I will explain to her more about that. You know, that's a good. Yeah, but I do love her. You know, and I love all of her. So it's a tough one. I mean, it's clear for you. It's not as clear for me. You know, I'm married now. You know, it's not a matter of like I'm having a sexual relationship with her and then I can be like, oh, geez, you know. So yeah, I mean, good point.
How are you not having a sexual relationship?
No, I mean, I am. So, but I'm not. It's not just a sexual. I'm not just going. I'm married to her. I've got children with her. So it's not a matter of me like after this conversation saying, you know what, I'm oppressing you. I need to leave you. Because number one, I love her more than anything, and number two, I'm married to her. I've got kids, so it's not just a sexual relationship or a dating relationship.
My response to that would be where love, so-called love, fits into all this. If white people really loved non-white people, we would not be having this conversation because we would not have a system of white supremacy. If a white person, anyone, wants to display some form of concern for me, so-called love for me, they would do everything they possibly could to replace white supremacy with justice. And I would go back to what we said earlier about suspicion. A white person, I mean, that conversation couldn't even begin. A white person saying that they love me, acknowledging that I should be extraordinarily suspicious of every white person in a system of white supremacy, they probably couldn't even get to the second syllable in, well, I love you. They probably couldn't even get to the second syllable in that sentence because, I mean, it would just be like, you've got to be joking. I'm a kafir, remember? You've got 5 of me at home, remember? Like, oh, yeah, okay, right. Replace white supremacy with justice, then we can talk about love. Until then, in my view, the sex... Well, I'll just ask before... I want to see if we can take some callers, too. Folks, if you want to call with a question, the number is 347-215-6071. You might have personal... I assume you will have personal bias, but if you can be honest, do you think it would be constructive if non-white people discontinued sexual intercourse with white people?
For the reasons that you stated, yes.
Okay.
For the reasons that you stated, yes. But I play on a gay rugby team now, and I'm just seeing how complicated when it comes to sex and love and who you get to have sex with and who you get to love. It's not quite as simple as it was when I was growing up. You married a white person, you had white kids, and you went that way. That was simple for me when I was a kid. Now it's just not as simple. So, but based on what we've been talking about, I would say yes. It is constructive for them to disengage, but I wouldn't be the guy telling them to disengage.
Okay. We had somebody. 214, are you there with a question or comment that you would like to ask Mr. Delport? Let's call it there, 214. Okay, I'll go check the switchboard. Justice, in the meantime, do you have other questions that you would like to ask?
Yes.
Go right ahead. Oh, before you get started, the callers, I'm going to put you on the air. Please, if you could hold the background noise down, I'll call out the area codes. And, yeah, please, I'm sorry for interrupting. Go right ahead, Justice.
Right now?
Yes, ma'am. You can go ahead and ask your questions.
Okay. Are your offspring non-white or white?
Me, I am white.
No, I said your offspring.
Sorry, Justice, could you say that again?
I said, are your offspring non-white or white?
They are white. They look white, and they are in the white, the whiteness that we've been talking about.
Do they function as white?
They will function as white, yeah.
How do they function as white?
Biologically, if you want to look at their biologically in genes, I don't know how you would trace it, but they would have Mexican, Jewish, British, Dutch, and French blood in them.
Then that means how do they function as white?
They were born to me. So
you're telling me that you are
Justice, my hope would be that they can be raised as white and Latina, because we're not practicing Jews, but that would be my hope.
Which means they would only be non-white or white. I mean, they can't be both.
But I mean, I would say they could be both, but I just given how much there's been, particularly in America, where people have intermarried, and where Gus and you have talked about how that's not right, but there's kids, and they had no doing in it, and so there are kids that are both. I don't know if I'd say white and non-white. Well, I suppose, yeah, white and non-white at the same time.
Justice, did you have another question?
Yes.
Oh.
How do you help your offspring understand more about racism, white supremacy, if they're white?
Well, so what I've been doing is I've got. Luckily, I've got quite a few African American friends. Well, there's not a whole lot at the University of Washington, which is a problem, but I've got some more African American friends that I bring to my house, that I go to their house. I take my son with me to the Urban League in Seattle, where I do some work. There's the lady. We've got good friends that are from Mexico, recently immigrated, that hang out with us a lot. So just trying to expose, and then when I told you that example of when my son was at the park and he saw the African American kids making a noise, and he said, "I don't like the black skinned kids." We, as much as you can discuss, and I mean, because 3-year-olds are pretty smart, and we spoke about that, and then we try and talk about it as much as we can and as much as it comes up.
Okay, so that's how you help your two
boys, yeah.
2 boys, okay. 2 boys learn more about racism, white supremacy, and are they white, you said?
Well, we talked about that earlier. I'm going to call them white and non-white because their parents are white and non-white, so they are a product of us, so they are in both worlds. But their lived experience will be a white experience, given the resources and the access that my wife as a doctor, and then I as a to-be doctor will be able to provide for them.
Okay.
Do you have more questions, Justice?
I'll think of some more.
Okay. 206, do you have a question?
Yeah, hi. My name's Dave Myers, and I have heard
Are you a non-white person?
Oh, I'm sorry. I am, my mother is Caucasian, and my father is African American.
I'm asking you, are you non-white or white?
Well, that's a loaded question, young lady, and that's one of the reasons why I entered into the fray of this conversation. I've got a website. It's called
I'm sorry for interrupting. We have a lot of callers. If you could make it as brief as possible with your question, I would appreciate it. I would normally not do it, but we have a lot of people that called in to ask questions today.
Okay. The website is discussrace.com, which brings up the issue of the racial construct, which we are inculcated to act on here in the United States. What I wanted to ask the gentleman from South Africa is, do you think that to combat racism, do you think that we really need to go and deconstruct the misinformation that's been perpetuated on society and educate people into the historiography of the evolution of human civilization originating in East Central Africa with Lucy, and then evolving from Homo erectus into Homo sapiens sapien within the past 200,000 years, and the populations moving away from the equator, and then of course developing a different phenotype, which makes us, by all outward appearances, look differently. Do you think that we need to provide this science to the world and to individuals here starting in America so we can change the paradigm of understanding? You're going to be able to tell people to be colorblind to your blue in the face, and if they're living in this racist, colorist society, they're going to be slapped repeatedly with the societal perpetration of racism, because we're in a white skin privileged racist society. You can't get away from it until you change the way you think about it. And we've been miseducated.
What do you mean by white privilege?
Who is the interviewer here?
She is the co-host on this show. Justice and myself co-host the show. We would be the interviewers.
Okay.
So, yeah.
What is white privilege? Well, first of all, you have to.
Yeah.
You have to.
Hello. Hello.
Ma'am.
Yes, sir.
Hello.
What privilege? What?
What is? I'm here.
Hello.
Could hold on 1 second, 301. We'll let him finish up. You're on the line, though.
Okay.
Okay. Are you asking 206, Dave Myers, what white privilege is?
I think she is, Dave. She is asking you what white privilege is.
Okay. Well, first of all, you have to understand the construct of whiteness. And if you understand what whiteness is, I think the gentleman from South Africa elucidated a little bit on what that construct is.
But I'm talking about what does it mean to you.
Well, what it means to me, ma'am, is that you have the choice to recognize your privilege. You have the choice. I mean, basically, you have the liberty to be an anti-racist, or to, if you're not part of the if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem, basically. And if you want to be an active anti-racist, then kind of it's each one teach one. And hopefully, if you're going around with information, you have informed yourself as comprehensively as practicably possible, and that would entail quite a lot of personal study. But we're all where we're at, so we all act on that reality. Yes. Did that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
And do you have a website? What is your website?
My website is discussrace.com, and I've actually got on it. I recently added an interview I did with I was on the Dr. Phil show a few years ago, and I added a relatively short but poignant interview I had with Ed Gordon on NPR. If you go into the discussion forum and just look through the links, you would be able to access that. There's some other interviews, but we don't need to go into that right now. It's and I've got quite an extensive reading list, well over 300 books.
We really have a lot of callers here. If you could shoot your question.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for. I wish we could talk some more, maybe another time. But thank you for the opportunity to speak, and I appreciate what you're doing.
You're not good.
Did you get his question, Mr. Delport?
I did. Sorry, Emily, I'm coming up in 5 minutes. I'm still on an interview. Sorry, Gus. Sorry, that was rude. The question, I don't know if looking at the biology is, I mean, it's helped me understand a little bit, but I think the biology and science has been, when you talk about suspicion, I'm so suspicious of that stuff, man, because they just throw it around. For 100 years it was used to make us, the white people superior, and now it's kind of coming back and they're saying, no, we're all equal, and I get that. I mean, I get it. But I just don't trust it, because what people do every day is often not as simple as looking at the biology. I think that helps, but I just don't know if it's as accessible. I mean, because some of the stuff he was talking about, I was kind of struggling to understand, and I've read a fair amount in the literature. So I imagine, for example, if I went to my students, particularly white students, or if I went back to South Africa and I started discussing it in that way, I think people would struggle to understand it like I did. But when I'm seeing concrete examples of it, and when I'm aware of, and when I'm seeing things day to day that are happening, that people can point out to me, or I can point out to myself. To me, that's more rich learning, but that's just my learning style. So, Mr. Myers, it could work. I don't know. I mean, right now, something is better than nothing.
Well, we have to start someplace.
Wait a second. We have 111. Do you have a question or a comment you would like to make?
What's up?
Yes, sir.
Hello?
Hold on 1 second. I guess 111, I think that's 720. Your area code is not showing up, but go ahead and ask your question.
It is victim, but I heard 301 before me. Let him go. He was first, please.
Okay. 301, please.
Thank you. How y'all doing today?
Doing well, sir.
The question I want to ask the young gentleman who's in the doctor's program is in Washington.
Yes, sir.
You said that your kids are white. Right?
Are you talking about Dave Myers?
No. I'm talking about the
yes. So I said that.
I was the one that was on Dr. Phil.
No. I'm talking to the gentleman who's...
Yeah, so I said they were white, and then when Justice pushed me further on it, I said they were both white and non-white, but I think their lived experience will more emulate the white. So I did start saying they were white, and then I said, no, they are white and non-white, but their lived experience will be white.
Okay, I just want to say this point. I understand you was talking about something about my wife helping me to understand racism. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like kind of like an inside of you.
Okay, here's my point. I don't think she can help you understand racism because white people invented it, so therefore you're a greater master at it.
Correct.
She can't show you anything. Basically what she can do is tell you the horror stories of it while you're doing it.
Correct.
So she can't help you. And back to what Gus was saying about non-white people and white people having sexual intercourse, I agree 100%. And the whole thing about love let's say, you know the song by Tina Turner, right? Called What's Love Got to Do with It?
Yeah.
That's the lyric I'm thinking of. What's love got to do with it? And
okay.
And the question I want to ask you is that when you and your wife get into an argument, right?
Yeah.
Or this heated discussion or whatever, do you revert... Hello?
Sorry, what happens often, yes?
Do you revert back to you was taught in South Africa?
No, I do not. I actually no, because I'm going to stay true to what I said. My visceral reaction might be, but when I look at her, to be honest with you, I'm looking at her as a white person. Okay, so my reaction is different to if it was a friend of mine who was Latino. So, I mean, I don't know if that answers your question, but when I'm arguing with her, I'm arguing with my wife, who I see as a white person. So.
But you just said you even go back
Hold on 1 second. I want to get 720 in to ask his question.
Okay, Hotep victims. Please bear with me, victims. These questions are extremely vital for you, extremely vital. And to you, is it Mr. Delport?
Yeah, you can call me John or Mr. Delport's fine.
Mr. Delport, if you could answer yes or no, it would be extremely helpful so I could get through these 4 or 5 questions as quickly as possible and give others the opportunity to speak. Now, first question, are you trying to eliminate white supremacy?
Yes.
Number 2, does that mean that you are sincere about your efforts to do that?
Yes.
Does that also mean that you are trying to help non-white people as opposed to hurting them?
Yes.
Okay, number 4, do you have substantial income, and is any part of that income what white people call disposable income?
Not my wife, because I'm a student right now. I have disposable income, but not as much as I was when I was teaching. So, yes, I do have disposable income.
Okay, then here's my question to you. I have a compensatory request for you, meaning we need to make up for something that's missing. The victim, the host of this show, has greater skills than most non-white victims in dealing with white supremacists such as yourself. It is vital for us, particularly for me, and I think it would be extremely constructive, since you said you are sincere and trying to eliminate this, if you could give the victim monies so that he can attend the White Privilege Conference. He is in dire need of getting monies. He needs money for a round-trip ticket to and from the conference. He also needs money for room and board. He has not asked for this. I, as a victim of white supremacy who has retarded skills in dealing with white supremacists, feel he would be an advocate for me and other non-white people if he could get to that conference. Now, before you answer yes or no, to any other non-white victims who are listening to this call and who may call in, it would be extremely constructive if you choose to do so, to say whether or not you think it would be constructive if Mr. Delport would give the victim money so that he could get to and from the White Privilege Conference and have room and board. If you could do that, it would be extremely helpful. Mr. Delport, will you do that for the victim?
Yes, I will assist him.
Thank you. I'm done, victim.
Thank you. Outstanding. 414.
Hi, how are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Good. How are you, Mr. Delport and Justin?
I'm good. A little uncomfortable, but that's good, right? That's learning, huh?
Yep. I just have a question. You said something about your wife that I may be misunderstanding, that you look at her as a white person.
No, you didn't misunderstand that. You answered that correctly, yes. It's probably very illogical saying that I recognize her as a Latina person, but when I'm with her, I recognize her as a white person. When I'm fighting with her, the question was, when I'm fighting with her, do I resort to my visceral, muscle memory? And I would say no, because I'm fighting with her as a white person.
So if you looked at her as a non-white person, do you think you would resort back to, mistreating her on the basis of color? Yes. To be honest, yes. If I wasn't married to her, if we were divorced, if there was something messy going on, I might. I mean, I can't tell you for a fact, yes, I would. I would hope I wouldn't, but my history tells me that I might. I would. So that's the uncomfortable part, right? Ooh, okay.
Interesting.
I mean, you asked me. I try to answer it as honestly as I could. I could pad it up, but I'm not going to.
Hello.
Thank you for your honesty.
Hold on, I want to check Justice. Justice, do you have any questions that you thought of?
I do not have any questions right now, but I do have something to say. I think Delmar had, I forgot what his name is, but I think he has been practicing white supremacy when he said both of his kids were non-white and white at the same time, which that very confuses a lot of non-white people, and it confused me.
Mm-hmm.
Do white people think your two boys, do they think they are white or non-white?
It depends. If they know of my wife's background, if they know, they will talk about them as Latino and white. But most, if you saw them in the street or if you met them after this interview, you would recognize them as white. Well, actually, you wouldn't, because I've told you that you would probably recognize them as white, because you guys don't do that, both white and non-white at the same time. So, from what I'm hearing you say, but family members, friends recognize them as white and non-white.
Take one last question. Folks on the line, 301, if you have a brief question you'd like to ask, go right ahead.
Back to the whole, your wife. Well, let's not hop on that. We know that. Let's get back to you. And you said you don't see her when you get into an argument.
Mm-hmm.
And you said you see her as a white person. Correct?
Yes.
Now, when you said at some point you do revert back there and then you remind yourself that she's white, correct?
Not with her. That is like in other situations. If we are talking about race, I will talk about her as a Latino.
No. Let's say for instance you.
Yeah, give me an example.
Like say for instance, she just all of a sudden said, "Hey, you're a fucking slob."
Yeah.
let's say that. And then you come back at her, and she made you really mad. Let's say to the point where you like, what is going on here? Now, just like the guy that tackled you very hard, one thing I find out about people in competition, you like to play rugby, I like playing football. You said when someone tackles you hard, when the black guy hit you hard, you said, I got 5 of you at home, correct?
Yeah, I just want to clarify. I didn't say that to him, to his face. I did it the usual way white supremacy is enacted. I did it behind his back.
So I got you. Now, if you would have said that, wouldn't have said it to your face, that you a person you didn't know, imagine what you would say when a person that you do love and do care about. Imagine what you could have said in front of her. Now,
well, with her, I'd say I go more to the gender than the race, which is just as bad. You know, because she's pretty comfortable in, you know, like what Justice was asking about. Why do white people call names and stuff like that? Because it's a way of power. And the way, like, if I'm being honest with you, caller, if I'm gonna try and hurt her feelings, I'm gonna talk to her about being a woman. So.
Okay. 720. Do you have a final question?
I do. Mr. Delport, what are you doing your PhD on?
Well, I'm in special education, and what I'm doing is looking at the overrepresentation of students of color and underrepresentation of students of color in special education, and trying to find case studies of families that are basically being mistreated by the system, and trying to draw light onto that particular situation. And then part of that is by me studying the law, seeing how as somebody in the academic world I can be an ally with people that are struggling in the system, and that also includes the juvenile justice system. So those are my 2 areas.
I have 2 other questions, and I think they're very important. When white people use the word nigger, what do they mean?
Well, I could talk more about kafir. I don't really use the word nigger because I just wasn't raised with it. But when I use the word kafir, I'm thinking of somebody who is inferior, somebody who is not worthy of me, and basically going to their color. Does that answer your question? Because I would say kafir and nigger, it's in the same way. If I were to use it, I wouldn't use nigger. I would use kafir. Me.
Okay. Did you have more to add to that?
No. I just wanted to clarify that was me.
And what is its purpose when you use it?
Like I said to Justice, it's to try and restore that balance, because if that person's made me feel uncomfortable or the white person feel uncomfortable, it's a way to put that person down. Like if I am calling somebody a fuck-up or something like that, it's to make them feel less than me.
So that
the balance is reinstated, where you're less than me and I'm above you because I have a name that makes you feel bad.
Is there more?
That's it.
So then, in South Africa, when you said the non-white victims would not look in the white supremacists' faces as an indication that they were inferior, then if a non-white person were to look into the white supremacist face and simply say, "Why are you looking at me, cracker or peckerwood?" would that offend that white supremacist person?
So I can talk for me. At that point in time, with that gentleman, probably not, because those Yeah, and so let me talk about now. So if I were to look and somebody would look at me and say that to me, that would upset me and hurt me. But then I would kick back onto my feeling of superiority and throw it straight back at them. I don't know if that answers your question.
But you said that right now it would hurt you and offend you?
Yeah, it would. Hurt and offend makes it seem, makes me sound like a victim. No, what it would do, it would trigger in me a reaction to say something back that makes that person feel bad. But it would not necessarily make me feel inferior. A person calling me a cracker.
But it would trigger a reaction.
It would trigger a reaction. That's kind of that like muscle memory I was talking about, my upbringing. Like boom, I would revert straight into, and I'm trying to be as honest as I can. I don't know if somebody came up to me now. I would say right now I'm so hypersensitive to this stuff that it would freak me out. Like, why is he calling me a cracker? I'm a nice guy, you know. I'm interested in issues of race, blah blah. But you know, if it were to be like a gut reaction, I would say I would just go back with a "fuck you, nigga. What the fuck are you talking about?"
We need to wrap it. I just have to be honest. This is show number 2 for myself and Justice. I am running out of gas. 414. Do you have a final question or comment?
No, this was a very interesting show.
I thought so too. Justice, I'll go out with you if you have a final question or comment you would like to get out.
Okay.
By the way, I want to apologize for using foul language. I just wanted to do that. Hello?
Yes, sir.
Hello?
Thank you.
Yeah, that's how I just wanted to. Hello?
Yes, sir. I heard you.
If I offended anyone, sorry.
Okay. Thank you. Justice, go right ahead, please.
Okay. How can the system of white supremacy be stopped?
Is that question to me, Justice?
No.
Or is it just anybody?
It's to... Hello?
Hello?
Who's this? Hello?
Hello, Justice?
We can hear you.
Okay.
Are you asking John Delport, our guest?
Yes, I'm
okay.
Okay. So how can we stop white supremacy? How can we stop it? Yeah, I'd say it is white people recognizing the system, acting against the system, and first step is probably understanding the system and understanding how it is an unjust system. And if you believe in justice, then it's something that everybody is implicated in, and everybody, and every white person, rich, poor, Jewish, Christian, whatever, it's their response. It's they need to help in overthrowing that system.
Okay. And why do mostly non-white people and white people focus on animals instead of trying to get to justice and guaranteeing no one is mistreated?
You know what? I've asked that question myself, Justice. Particularly around when I go back to South Africa and I look at and just in Africa and yeah, I mean I'm from Africa, so I think about Africa, but here is just like we spend so much time and money saving the whales, where our juvenile, the prison system is just overrun with people that shouldn't be there. Our school system, I'm not sure where you go to school, but our school system, the best teachers are not going to work with kids in the schools where there's mostly non-whites. And I think that's a good question, and I would pose that question as often as I can, and I hope I do, to the people that get to make policy and laws and stuff like that, and decide who gets funding. very good question. We spend a lot of time on the animals when people are dying and where people are just living as they not as they should be.
Okay. And that's all I have for right now.
Okay. Thank you, Justice. It was good talking to you.
Mhm.
Well, I am officially on E. I do think this was a very interesting and informative program. I hope the folks who tuned in to listen and called, I hope they found something constructive, interesting in the broadcast. Mr. Delport, thank you for sharing your Sunday evening with us. You said this is something that you're interested in talking in. This is all we talk about on this program. Okay. So if you would like to come back to talk about, because I would love to talk about ways that you see racism, white supremacy working at the University of Washington. We didn't really get to that today. And I know individuals who are in your department who are admitted racists. That's something I would definitely like to address. Would you be interested in coming back and chat with us again?
I would, and the way I know that I would is that I feel really uncomfortable and unhappy right now, and that's a good sign that I'm learning. So I would love to come back and learn some more.
Outstanding. I think I learned some things today. And Justice, did you learn anything today?
Hello?
Yes, ma'am. Justice, did you learn anything from the second show that we did today?
Yes, I did. I did learn that white people are practicing white supremacy every day, every second, no matter where you are. White people are practicing white supremacy.
He did say that. He even said when he's breathing, he's practicing white supremacy. Very good, Justice. I learned a lot, but I'm tired now. I need to rest. And Cynthia McKinney on the program tomorrow morning, 11 a.m. Pacific. That's 2 p.m. Eastern. Cynthia McKinney, we're making up for the program that was supposed to happen 2 weeks ago where someone interfered, sabotaged that effort. So we'll be back tomorrow. Very quick turnaround. Thank everybody for tuning in. Mr. Delport said he would be willing to come back. So, hey, you can look out for him coming back on the Cows in the future. Would love to talk with him again. Thank you for sharing your Sunday afternoon with us. We'll definitely be in touch. And I definitely think it was constructive, Mr. Delport.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Signing off for the program, Context of White Supremacy, Gus T. Renegade, Justice, and,